Week 14 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few kickers I look to start this week. The first kicker, Will Lutz of the Denver Broncos. Will Lutz having a good season for this Denver Bronco team. Last week, a pretty good game it was for him at the Commanders. And this week, a slam dunk matchup at the Vegas Raiders. I give up the 10th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So the last few weeks for Lutz, week 10 versus Vegas 4, week 11 versus Kansas City 18, and week 13 at the Commanders 9. So this Raider defense can't stop anyone. We saw the Chargers go up and down the field versus them in last week's ball game. And Will Lutz, 50-plus yards, hasn't been a problem for him throughout his career. So I think this week Will Lutz once again goes out there and his kicker a couple points on the board. And to start this week, the next kicker, Chase McLaughlin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Chase McLaughlin, it's been an up-and-down season. This Tampa Bay Buc team, 7-5 on the year, starting to get a little healthier in the offense. Bucky Irvin returned to the lineup. Mike Evans possibly might practice this week and be back sooner than later. And Chase McLaughlin, he's got a deep boot. We've seen it on and off throughout the season, but he finally had a double-digit game. The first one in a month it was for McLaughlin. Week 10 versus New England 5, Week 11 at Buffalo 8, Week 12 at the Rams 1, and Week 13 versus Arizona 10 fantasy points. So this week a good matchup versus New Orleans Saints, a defense that can't stop anyone, one of the worst teams in the league, and they give up the 11th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So I think opportunities will be there for Chase McLaughlin. And like I said, more times than not, when he's getting opportunities, 2 or 3 field goal attempts per game, he's going to score double digits. So this week, I think Chase McLaughlin, once again, a solid start and a good matchup versus the Saints. Next kicker, Jake Bates of the Detroit Lions. So this week, Dallas Cowboys coming in. Thursday Night Football, big game for both teams in this one. Pretty much whoever loses this game this season is over, in my opinion, going into this one. So Jake Bates, the last couple weeks, he's been a solid kicker. And when you're in a high-powered offense, obviously, like Detroit, you're going to put points on the board. But this Cowboy defense definitely improved over the last few weeks, training for Quinnen Williams, trading for Logan Wilson, Overshown coming back into the lineup as well for this Cowboy team. Diggs possibly returning as well to the lineup in this ball game, but it's an indoor game, Thursday night, usually high-scoring games, and opportunities will be there for Bates, and especially if I'm Ross St. Brown, can't give it a go. I think, obviously, that's a few drives they're going to stall out with their best receiver out of the lineup. The last few weeks for Bates, Week 10 at Washington, 11, Week 11 at Philly, 3, Week 12 versus the Giants, 12, and Week 13 versus Green Bay, 6 fantasy points. So like I said, this Cowboy defense definitely improved, but still give up the 13th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. And Bates to start this week, especially in possibly a high-scoring game. Next kicker, Evan McPherson of the Cincinnati Bengals. McPherson coming off a monster game, hitting 6 field goals in that ball game at the Baltimore Ravens with 24 fantasy points. So the last few weeks for Money Mac, 3 out of 4 games, double-digit fantasy points, and he's in a high-powered offense with the Cincinnati Bengal team with Joe Burrow back in the lineup. And this week, they know they got to put points on the board at Buffalo, even though it's a tough place to kick, especially this time of year with wind and possibly even snow in early December. Week 9 versus Chicago 11, Week 11 in Pittsburgh 8, Week 12 versus New England 12, and Week 13, the monster game in Baltimore, 24 fantasy points. So like I said, Buffalo Bills came off a big win at the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's going to be opportunities, I think, though, for McPherson in this game to get field goal chances. And like I said, they got to put points on the board if you want to keep up with this offense. So this week, I think Money Mac goes out there once again and has a good ball game. And to start this week in the final kicker, Jason Myers of the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle, one of the best teams in the league. Now they're tied for first in the NFC West, 9-3, with the Los Angeles Rams coming off a blowout victory versus the Minnesota Vikings. And Jason Myers, he's having a monster season and 4 games in a row now with double-digit fantasy points, and the last 7 out of 8 games with double-digit fantasy points. He's putting a lot of points on the board, and the Seattle offense, they are stalling out a whole lot. And this week, another great matchup with the Falcons, an indoor game, you can't beat that. Falcons defense isn't that good. Factors, like I said, indoor game, and on an offense that stalls out a lot. Myers, he's going to get a lot of opportunities again. Week 10 versus Arizona, 15. Week 11 at the Rams, 15. Week 12 at Tennessee, 13. And Week 13 versus Minnesota, 19 fantasy points. He's putting up elite numbers, and he's been the best kicker over the last month of the season. Easily is Jason Myers, and definitely a kicker to start this week. So that's a few kickers I would start for Week 14 of the fantasy football season.